Book of Heaven, Volume 6, Part 5. July 22nd, 1904. Only stability is what reveals the progress of divine life within the soul. Continuing in my usual state, Blessed Jesus came for just a little and told me, "My daughter, when the soul proposes either not to sin or to do some good, and does not carry out the proposition she made, it is a sign that those things are not done with her whole will, and that the divine light has had no contact with the soul. In fact, when her will is true, and the divine light makes known to her the evil to be avoided or the good to be done, the soul hardly fails to execute what she has proposed. On the other hand, when the divine light does not see stability in her will, it does not administer to her the necessary light in order to avoid something or to do something else. At the most, there might be moments of misfortune, abandonments by creatures or some other circumstance, such that it seems that the soul would want to undo herself for God and change life. But as soon as the wind of the circumstances changes, immediately her human will changes. So instead of the will and of the light, it can be said that there is a mixture of passions according to the changes in the winds. Stability alone is what reveals the progress of divine life within the soul, because, since God is immutable, the one who possesses him shares in his immutability in good. July 27th, 1904. For the one who truly loves God, all things are divine will. Everything must be sealed by love. As I was in my usual state, my adorable Jesus came out from within my interior, and holding my head up, for I was very tired because of the long time waiting for him, he told me, "My daughter, the one who truly loves me, in anything that happens to her, internal and external, devours everything as one single thing, that is, the divine will. Of all things, none seems strange to her, as she looks at it as a product of the divine will. Therefore she consumes everything in it. So her center, her aim, is only and solely the will of God. She always makes her round within it, as though inside a ring, without ever finding the way out, and making of it her continuous food." Having said this, he disappeared. Later, as he came back, he told me, "Daughter, let everything in you be sealed by love. If you think, you must only think of love. If you speak, if you work, if you palpitate, if you desire, if even just one desire that is not love comes out of you, restrict it within yourself, convert it into love, and then give it the freedom to go out." And while saying this, he seemed to be touching my whole person with his hand, placing many seals of love. July 28th, 1904. The soul who is detached from everything finds God in all things. This morning, as I was in my usual state, Blessed Jesus came for a little while and told me, "My daughter, when the soul is detached from everything, in all things she finds God. She finds him within herself. She finds him outside of herself. She finds him in creatures. So it can be said that for the soul who is completely detached, all things convert into God. Even more, not only does she find him, but she contemplates him, she feels him, she embraces him. And since she finds him in everything, so do all things administer to her the occasion to adore him, to pray him, to thank him, to draw close to him more intimately. And besides, your laments about my privation are not completely reasonable. If you feel me in your interior, it is a sign that I am not only present outside of you, but also inside, as though in my own center. I forgot to say at the beginning that the Queen Mamma brought him to me, and since I was praying him to content me and not to leave me without himself, blessed Jesus answered in the way written above. July 29th, 1904. Faith makes one know God, but trust makes one find him. Continuing in my usual state, as soon as I saw my adorable Jesus, I said to him, "My Lord and my God." And he continued, "God, God, God alone." Daughter, faith makes one know God, but trust makes one find him. So without trust, faith is sterile, and even though faith possesses immense riches with which the soul can enrich herself, if there is no trust, she remains always poor and lacking in everything. While he was saying this, I felt myself being drawn into God, and I remained absorbed in him like a little drop of water in the immense sea. As much as I looked, I could find no boundaries, either of height or of breadth. Heaven and earth, blessed and pilgrim souls, all were immersed in God. I could also see wars, like that between Russia and Japan. The thousands of soldiers who were dying and shall die, and that by justice, also natural, the victory shall be of Japan. And I saw that other European nations are plotting machinations of war even against nations of Europe. But who can say all that I could see of God and in God? So to end it, I stop here. July 30th, 1904. The detachment that priests must have. This morning, blessed Jesus was not coming, and I, finding myself outside of myself, made my round, and made my round, in search of my highest and only good. And not finding him, my soul felt itself dying at each instant. But what increased my torment was that while I felt I was dying, I would not die. For if I could die, I would reach my intent, to be forever in the center, God. Oh, separation, how bitter and painful you are! There is no pain that can be compared to you. Oh, divine privation, you consume, you pierce. You are a two-edged sword that cuts on one side and burns on the other. The pain you give is immense as is God. Now, while making my round, I found myself in purgatory, and my sorrow and my crying seemed to increase the sorrow of those poor souls deprived of their life, God. Among them there seemed to be quite a few priests, one of whom seemed to be suffering more than the others. And he said to me, "My grave sufferings come from the fact that in life I was very attached to family interests, to earthly things, and I had a little attachment to some people. This produces so much evil for the priest as to form an iron shell, covered with mud, that enwraps him like a garment, and only the fire of purgatory and the fire of the privation of God, that is such that, compared to it, the first fire disappears, can destroy this shell. Oh, how much I suffer! My pains are unutterable. Pray, pray for me." I felt even more tormented, and I found myself inside myself. Later I saw just the shadow of Blessed Jesus, and he told me, "My daughter, what were you searching for? For you there are no other reliefs and helps but me alone." He disappeared like a flash, and I was left saying, he himself tells me this, that he alone is everything for me, and yet he has the courage to leave me without, deprived of him. July 31st, 1904. The human will falsifies and profanes even the holiest works. Continuing in my poor state, it seemed that he came more than once, and I seemed to see him as a child, as though surrounded by a shadow. He said to me, "My daughter, don't you feel the freshness of my shadow? Rest in it, for you shall find refreshment." And it seemed that we rested together in his shadow, and I felt all reinvigorated being close to him. Then he continued, "My beloved, if you love me, I do not want you to look either inside or outside of yourself, at whether you are warm or cold, at whether you do much or little, or at whether you suffer or enjoy. All this must be destroyed in you. You must have your eyes fixed only on whether you do as much as you can for me, and everything to please me. The other ways, as high, sublime, and industrious as they might be, cannot please me and content my love. Oh, how many souls falsify true devotion and profane the holiest works with their own will, always seeking themselves. Even in holy things, if one seeks her own way and taste and the satisfaction of herself, if she finds herself, she escapes from God and does not find him. August 4th, 1904. The glory of the blessed in heaven shall be according to the ways in that they conducted themselves with God on earth. From the very way God is for the soul, it can be seen how the soul is for God. This morning, when Blessed Jesus came, he transported me outside of myself, and taking me by the hand, he took me up to just below the vault of the heavens, from where one could see the blessed and hear their chanting. Oh, how the blessed were swimming in God! One could see their lives in God, and the life of God in them. This alone seems to me to be the whole essence of their happiness. It also seems to me that each blessed is a new heaven in that blessed dwelling, but all distinct among themselves. There is no one similar to anyone else. And this happens according to the ways in that they conducted themselves with God on earth. One tried to love him more. He shall love him more in heaven, and shall receive from God ever new and increasing love, in such a way that this heaven shall have a divine tint and feature, all special. another tried to glorify him more. And blessed God shall give him ever-increasing glory, in such a way that this new heaven shall be more glorious and glorified by the very divine glory. And so with all the other distinct ways that each one had with God on earth, such that if I wanted to say everything, I would be too long. So it can be said that what we do for God on earth, we shall continue in heaven, but with greater perfection. Therefore the good we do is not temporary, but shall last for eternity, and shall shine before God and around us continuously. Oh, how happy we shall be in seeing that all our good and the glory we give to God, as well as our own, comes from that little bit of good that we started imperfectly on earth. If all could see this, oh, how they would hasten more to love, to praise, to thank the Lord, so as to be able to do it with greater intensity in heaven. But who can say everything? Rather, it seems to me that I am speaking much nonsense about that blessed dwelling place. My mind has it in one way, but my mouth cannot find the words to manifest it. Therefore I move on. Then afterwards he transported me to earth. Oh, how horrifying are the troubles of the earth in these sad times. Yet, it seems that this is nothing yet, compared to what will come, both in the religious state, so much so that it seems that the Church, this good and holy Mother, shall be torn to shreds by her very children, and in the secular state. Then after this, he took me back into myself and told me, "Tell me a little bit, my daughter. How am I for you?" And I, "Everything. You are everything for me. Nothing enters into me. Everything flows outside, except for you alone." And he, "And I am all for you. Nothing of you goes out of me, but I delight all of myself in you. So from the very way I am for you, you can see how you are for me." Having said this, he disappeared. August 5th, 1904. Jesus, ruler of kings and Lord of lords. Continuing in my usual state, blessed Jesus came for just a little, in act of ruling and dominating everything, and of reigning with the crown of king on his head, and with the scepter of command in his hand. While I was seeing him in this position, he told me, though in Latin, but I shall say it according to what I understood, "My daughter, I am the ruler of kings and the Lord of lords. To me alone is this right of justice due, that the creature owes me. And by not giving it to me, she denies me as creator and master of everything." While saying this, he seemed to take the world in his hand and turn it upside down, so that the creatures would submit to his regime and dominion. At the same time, I could also see how the Lord ruled and dominated my soul, with such mastery that I felt all sunken inside of him. From him came the regime of my mind, of my affections, of my desires. Many electric wires passed between me and him. Through that he directed and dominated everything. August 6, 1904. The privation is pain of fire that ignites, consumes, annihilates, and its purpose is to destroy the human life in order to constitute the divine. This morning I went through a most bitter time because of the privation of my highest and only good. The sorrow of the privation was such that as I found myself outside of myself, the pain of my soul was so great that the pain itself administered such strength to it that it wanted to destroy whatever it found as hindrance to finding its all, God. And not finding him, it would shout, cry, run more than wind. It wanted to upset everything, to turn everything upside down in order to find the life it was lacking. Oh, privation, how intense is your bitterness! Your sorrow is always new, and because it is new, the soul feels the bitterness of the pain as ever new. My soul feels as if one whole flesh would separate into many shreds, and all those shreds, with justice, ask for their own life, and they shall find it only if they find God, who is more than their life. But who can say the state I was in? Meanwhile, saints, angels, and purging souls rushed up to me, placing themselves in circle around me, and preventing me from running, compassionating me and assisting me. But everything was useless for me, because in them I could not find he who alone could soothe my pain and restore my life. And so I shouted more loudly, crying out, "Tell me, where can I find him? If you want to have pity on me, do not delay showing him to me, for I can take no more." Then after this, he came out from within the depth of my soul, and it seemed that he pretended to be sleeping, without being concerned about the harshness of my poor state. But even though he would not bother, and was sleeping, upon merely seeing him, I breathed my life as one breathes air, saying, he is here with me." However, I was not freed of the pain in seeing that he would not even pay attention to me. Then, after much suffering, as if he had awakened, he told me, "My daughter, all other tribulations can be penances, expiations, compensations, but only the privation is pain of fire that ignites, consumes, annihilates, and does not give up until it sees the human life destroyed. But while it consumes, it vivifies, and constitutes in it the divine life." August 7th, 1904. The first to persecute the church shall be the religious. As I was in my usual state, I found myself surrounded by angels and saints, who said to me, "It is necessary that you suffer more, because of the imminent things that are about to happen against the church. For if they do not come about imminently, time shall make them happen in a milder way and with lesser offense to God." And I said, "Is suffering perhaps in my power? If the Lord gives it to me, I shall gladly suffer." Meanwhile they took me and brought me before the throne of our Lord, and they prayed together that he would make me suffer. And blessed Jesus, coming toward us in the form of the crucified, shared his pains with me. Not only once, but I spent almost all morning amid continuous renewals of the crucifixion. Afterwards he said to me, "My daughter, sufferings divert my just indignation, and the light of grace is renewed in the human minds. Ah, daughter, do you think that it shall be the secular who shall be the first to persecute my church? Ah, no, it shall be the religious, the very leaders, who pretending now to be sons and shepherds, while in reality they are poisonous snakes that poison themselves and others, shall begin among themselves to lacerate this good mother, and then the secular shall follow." Then, as obedience called me, the Lord withdrew, but all embittered. August 8th, 1904. The soul must look for Jesus within herself, not outside. Everything must be enclosed in one word: love. The one who loves Jesus is another Jesus. While I continued struggling, my adorable Jesus came for just a little. But even though I felt him near me, I would try to grab him, and he would escape me, almost preventing me from going outside of myself to go in search of him. Then, after I struggled very much, he made himself seen for just a little and told me, "My daughter, do not look for me outside of yourself, but within yourself, in the depth of your soul, because if you go outside and do not find me, you shall suffer very much, and shall not be able to endure. If you can find me more easily, why do you want to struggle more?" And it is because I believe that, not finding you immediately within myself, I can find you outside. It is love that pushes me to this. And is it love that pushes you to this? Everything should be enclosed in one single word: love. If the soul does not enclose everything in this, it can be said that she does not know a thing about loving me. And according to how much the soul loves me, so do I expand the gift of suffering. And I, interrupting his speaking, all surprised and afflicted, said, "My life, and my whole good. So, since I suffer little or nothing, I love you little or not at all? What fright! The mere thought that I do not love you. My soul feels a sharp disappointment, and I even almost feel offended by you." And he added, "I do not intend to disappoint you. Your disappointment would press on my heart more than on your own. And besides, you must not look at the mere corporal sufferings, but also at the spiritual, and at the true will you have to suffer, because if the soul truly wants to suffer, for me it is as if the soul had suffered. Therefore calm yourself and do not be troubled, and let me continue speaking. Haven't you ever seen two intimate friends? Oh, how they try to imitate each other, and to each portray one's friend within himself. So they imitate the voice, the manners, the steps, the works, the clothing, in such a way that the friend can say, "The one who loves me is another me, and since he is me, I cannot help loving him." So I do with the soul who encloses all of me within herself, as though within a small circle of love. I feel as though portrayed within her, and finding myself, I love her with all my heart, and I cannot do without being with her, because if I leave her, I would leave myself. While saying this, he disappeared. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 6, Part 5. Fiat.